What's going on, everybody? I'm Tom Bogert here with Tony Meola, Benny Feilhaber, the latest episode. Yes, we've got a pinch hitter in the host chair. Everybody had a very busy World Cup, a very busy summer. We got a few people taking some days off, but Tony Meola, there's never any days off for the big dog. How are we doing?
Oh, they're coming, my friend. They're coming. This actually yesterday, after I left the Northeast, started my vacation. But I did say during my vacation, the only thing I'm going to do for the next month is work on Call It What You Want. So, Call It What You Want has been built in, Tom, to my vacation. I'm not sure that Jimmy or Chuck could say that in any of their vacations that they've taken throughout the year. No, but it's good. A lot of stuff to talk about for sure.
No, very, very clearly not. Happy to be here. Happy to fill in. Happy to be here with my guy, Benny Feilhaber. Benny, how we doing?
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Tone. I'm on vacation as well. I'm actually at my parents' house in California visiting grandparents with the kids. So making it happen.
Nice.
We do what we can to get on the show. So I'm excited to be here.
Nice.
Listen, we just got three guys here ready to work. The people behind the scenes ready to work. We can't say that about Jimmy and Charlie, and it's a little bit disappointing. Never meet your heroes. But today's show, it's a packed one. We've got Mauricio Pochettino on Monday, officially continuing as the U.S. men's national team manager for a 4-year deal through the 2030 cycle. We're going to talk about the latest news around MLS. We got a new commissioner. We got a commissioner to-do list. We've got transfer news. We got all of that, as well as USMNT transfer roundup. So we want to thank you for being here to join us on Call It What You Want, whether you're with us live on YouTube, watching on the Galazzo Network, or listening to the podcast. But guys, let's get into the big news of the day. It wasn't a surprise after some of the reports came out, but it's official now. Mauricio Pochettino is continuing on as U.S. national team manager. The deal is through the 2030 World Cup. We'll talk about how long we think that'll actually end up being. But Tony, what is your initial thoughts on this deal going official and Pochettino continuing as USMNT manager?
Yeah, well, first off, congratulations to him, right? Signing this deal. I don't think there has ever been a question of is Mauricio Pochettino a good coach or is he a bad coach, right? I think we all think he's a good coach, right, and understands how to do things. There were moments during his 18-month, we'll call it first stint, right, where he had some bumps in the road. There's no doubt about it. And there's going to be bumps in the road over the next 4 years. But during the World Cup, this team captured the hearts of so many fans, right? Up to where we had over 50 million watching against Belgium. So there's certainly some positives. Paraguay, the level of play, even really for 4 matches, the level of play, which didn't lead us to believe what we were going to see, which was basically the biggest capitulation that we could have seen against Belgium in that match, in a way that I don't think people can forget the way that game turned out. So, long story short, ups and downs. I think in the end, more ups than downs, and we saw a direction of where he wants to go. I'm interested, once we get into his comments, how we decipher all of those. But in general, happy. But my fear is what I've said all along is that if he doesn't stay here 4 years, what does that look like? Okay, he's got a 4-year contract, but even he in his comments basically gave himself an out, if you will, right? But in general, I'm happy. You know me. You guys know me. If that's the guy that they pick, I'm behind the guy 100%. I'm a little bit surprised. I didn't think it was going to happen, Benny. I thought regardless of the result, he would be out of here, but now he's the manager, and again, if I was one of those players, be okay. Now let's roll. I know what to expect. Let's roll from here.
Yeah, Tony, I think you kind of touched on it. My perspective is similar, although I'm a little bit more worrisome. I think we all have our ways of looking at it, right? There's the optimist, the pessimist, the realist, and I fall, I think, somewhere in between. Where do I think Pochettino is the right guy for the job in terms of the quality of the head coach? I don't think there's much doubt in that. I think he's shown that he can, go through those early bumps and struggles and figure out the roster. I think he's got the best out of a lot of players. I think he didn't allow a lot of players to rest on their laurels as well. And so there's a lot of positives. And look, the best that we saw the national team was at the biggest level up until that game that you talked about that we definitely capitulated, right, against Belgium. But at the biggest level, we saw some of the best performances of the national team against Paraguay, against Bosnia in the knockout round. Obviously, even the Turkey game that we ended up losing, but with a rotated squad, I thought was a pretty good performance. So there was a lot of positives in the World Cup that captivated an audience. So that would be wonderful to maintain that integrity, that continuity. However, the part that really worries me is one, the biggest thing, which is he going to be the coach in the World Cup? And that is a big question mark that I think a lot of people have. So our hope, right? It's a hope that kills, but our hope is that he's going to remain for the 4 years in its entirety as the coach. If that happens, I think it is the right decision to bring him back. If it doesn't, then I think it's categorically the wrong decision to have brought him back.
Very interesting. Oh, go ahead, Benny.
All right, Tom, the only last part that I would say is, and I think these will be some of the struggles which we've seen, and I know we'll talk about this a little bit, is that second cycle aspect, right? Where the messaging isn't brand new, right? It's again, we've heard it before. The players have heard it before. How do they react? It's not the shiny new toy where everybody's like, wow, Mauricio Pochettino, this international Argentinian coach is going to be our coach now. And the players are wowed by him. Maybe that's not the same case anymore. There's new players coming into the fold as well. And so how does that change the relationship of all the players and the coaches? So that's a different difficulty that he'll have to come across, which will be interesting to see how he deals with it. But to me, the biggest question mark is he the coach in 2030? If the answer is yes, I think it's a very, very good rehire. If the answer is no, I think that is, a poor one.
Yeah, plenty to get into with this new contract for Pochettino. But first, let's hear from the man himself in an interview with
Hold on,
US
Scoops. Hold on, real quick. What do you feel about this? What before we get to this clip, what's your thoughts on this?
So a number of different ways, and I don't want to sound like I'm fence sitting because yes, I think he's a very good coach. I thought that he did fine, very well at times, but fine overall at the World Cup, given the manner of the exit against Belgium. He had some good and bad in his tenure, and there's two ways of looking at it. One, he's a good coach, but I'm still doubtful that he's here in 2030. But the other side of this is, while it's kind of a marriage of convenience, and I don't mean that in a negative way, kind of a marriage of convenience for Pochettino himself, it's also kind of a marriage of convenience for U.S. Soccer in that, okay, if not Pochettino, if we're like, we don't believe that you'll be here in 2030, who are you hiring right now? There's definitely no obvious better candidate. I don't think that there's a real obvious candidate rather than Pochettino. So I think I'm good with it, even understanding that I wouldn't love it if in a year, in 9 months or 15 months, whatever it ends up being, if a Premier League job, if a La Liga job comes open that he wants and he leaves. But like, I think I'm good with this right now because there isn't another obvious solution, and I don't want to just be up here making critiques and then, okay, what's the solution? Well, I don't have one, right? I think the context is very important here in that there's no obvious replacement, and Pochettino's a good coach. So I think all the way around, it makes sense to continue, even if we're worried about whether it'll be 4 years or not. Tony, to your point, he gave an interview with a small group of media, and he was asked, are you going to be here in 4 years? Pretty point blank. And I respected his answer was a bit introspective, very honest, and I thought really realistic and fair. So I appreciate it on one end. You know what he didn't say? 100% yes. He kind of said 4 years is a long time. We totally intend to be here. We wouldn't sign a contract if we didn't. Like, that's not how we work. But 4 years is a long time. Maybe the people who love me now in 1 year, they don't love me, and maybe they don't want me to go, right? It was a creative way of saying, hey, if Real Madrid fires Mourinho and calls, then maybe he's gone. I will say sources told me that there is a buyout in this contract. I don't have the monetary value, but one person at US Soccer I spoke with kind of described it as like a fair valuation, but high, in that it won't be a hurdle that deters teams that want to sign him, but it won't leave US Soccer in a lurch with a very low release clause, if that makes any sense. But let's hear from Pochettino himself before continuing this convo.
Really love the culture of USA. Of course, the music, the people. We feel really very welcome. We feel the love from the people. You are amazing people. It's an amazing country with different type of culture doing the same, in that big country. We are so excited also to share with the people, with the fans, because we really appreciate the way that people treat us there. Seeing the potential of our fans and all the people on this amazing country that is USA, show us during the World Cup. I think it's an amazing opportunity, you know, to be involved and to be part of, to create and to evolve and to develop an amazing new cycle of 4 years. Now the approach is going to be different and must be different because it's a 4-year cycle. It's a project that is about to establish and to settle different principles.
So there it is, Mauricio Pochettino speaking after re-signing with U.S. Soccer, and he'll start a second cycle. Of course, he didn't get a full first cycle. He took over for Greg Berhalter about, 18 or 20 months before the 2026 World Cup. But it's been an issue in the past for the U.S. men's national team of coaches going into a second cycle. You look at kind of the last 4 managers that did so, none of them ended up in a positive way. Bruce Arena was the only one who got to a second World Cup, and that was in 2006, and it was a disappointment after the quarterfinal run in 2002, eliminated in the group stage. Bob Bradley didn't last very long after a strong 2010 World Cup. Jurgen Klinsmann had a strong 2014 World Cup, and he continued on, and he ends up getting fired early in qualifying. The U.S. ends up failing to qualify for the 2018 World Cup. Greg Berhalter, too, that was a bit of a weird one, not just because he ends up getting a second cycle. There was two interim coaches between him ending the 22 World Cup and him returning as head coach. Then the Copa America disaster happens and he gets fired and Pochettino comes in. So, Tony, for me, what goes wrong in the second cycle? Like, why has this been such a fall off for each of these 4 coaches that they've hit a peak and then drops in the second cycle?
First, for sure. That's an important question. First, with regards to his interview, right? I watched that. It was 10.5 minutes or something like that. And I actually enjoyed it. For the first time, I enjoyed because you're not bringing like a new guy in. You're bringing a guy who experienced the culture, right? And I believed everything that he said in there. But the part that struck me, well, first there was the approach is going to be different in that interview, in that clip we played there, right? Which means he's at the start of a new cycle. He's going to have to see new players. It's going to be different. But there was a moment in there where he talked about how empty him and his staff were after the Belgium match. And I was like, that's kind of what I wanted to hear, because you know me, when it comes to foreign guys, I always feel like, and this is MLS, this is national team, I always feel like they got one foot out the door all the time. Right? Like, I want you to be completely invested in this. And I got that out of the interview. Again, we don't know if he's going to be here. He said that himself. But that part would stink. With regards to second cycles, the Bruce Arena one, if you remember after the 2006 World Cup, he said his biggest mistake was his group was like a year and a half too old. Like, he didn't make enough changes to that group. Greg Berhalter was a guy that was basically blamed for, you didn't make any changes. These guys are too comfortable. But the truth is, his team was really young in 2022. Mm-hmm. I think they were the second youngest team, right, in that World Cup. I don't remember. Benny would have a better feel on Bradley. Well, Klinsmann, I remember, just qualifying went poorly, right? But he had a good enough team to qualify. Benny would know better with Bradley.
Yeah. Bob was mostly, and Ivis brought it up as well, where Bob was mostly, Sunil Gulati wanted to hire Klinsmann as the coach. And I don't think there was much of a drop-off. I mean, I wasn't in that Gold Cup squad in 2011. They went to the finals and ultimately got beaten by what I would consider a better Mexican team at that time, with Giovanni Dos Santos at his peak. And he scored that, the wonder goal that they came back from behind. I think we were up 2-0 and lost 4-2. So there wasn't much of a drop off, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of results. And I just think that the Federation kind of wanted to get Klinsmann at that time, and they found the moment to do it. And so, Bob became a casualty, unfortunately, for him and for me.
So the question, I thought you didn't know much about that cycle. I know the question is like, what will be different? Who knows what'll be different? How do we know it's going to be different? I think we all will, and we'll go through our to-do list, I'm sure, and we'll have differing opinions on that. I don't know that you can predict what would be different, right? This change, I would say, Tony, surprised. Go ahead.
I was just going to say one thing that just like pops up into my head, right? And I know players, can let things be in the past, right? But it's interesting to me right now. The very first thing that I think about in terms of relationship wise that Pochettino's going to have to figure out is, my guess is guys that didn't make the roster for this World Cup are going to get called in. And I wonder how a Diego Luna feels, right? Coming in back to camp and now finding his way. Can he get back into good grace? I mean, I don't even know if it's bad graces. I think that us media sometimes talk about, oh, Diego Luna didn't make it and now he's pissed off that he didn't get in, whatever. I don't think that's how it truly works. But there are little hurdles for players like him that Pochettino will want to get him back into the lineup or back into the fold. And there's those relationships hurdles or so. And so, and there could be some with players that were there, right? I mean, I don't know exactly, like Christian Pulisic. He didn't have a good World Cup. Is there a disagreement there or a disappointment there from Pochettino and Pulisic? Does he bring him in right away? Does he make him have to earn it again? So I think the relationship aspect, we're all human. And humans tend to, in the first, honeymoon phase, it's a lot easier to get along. And then once you get to know each other for 4+ years, maybe those differences become an impasse. And so I do think that that's the biggest aspect of a second cycle, is maintaining that good relationship with players. They still want to play for you. You still get the best out of them.
So, and thank you to all who's live on YouTube with us, leaving comments. We'll be peppering them throughout the show. Benny, a few things from me on that. And this kind of dovetails into the message not getting stale. Pochettino's whole foundation that he tried to build was, it's competition. You have to earn your spot every time. So while maybe his man management hasn't been perfect, it's been consistent, I think, in that, hey, it's a pretty old school structure in that the coaching staff decides, and that is what it is. He listens to his player. He has good relationships, particularly when they're together. But the whole idea of, if you win your spot on Saturday in a game, that's cool. You got to win it again on Monday in training and Tuesday at training. Everything is about a competition. So as long as he keeps the players bought in, which they absolutely were at the World Cup, and the idea is that will continue, I think that'll help the message not get stale, because the whole point is the competition. Same thing with, say, Diego Luna, Tanner Tessman, Aiden Morris. Those are three guys that I think were kind of the last cuts from the World Cup squad. He didn't get a personal touch by calling them, and I know that could rub some people the wrong way, but again, it was consistent. And I think if the onus is on a guy like Diego Luna, the onus is on Tanner Tessman or Aiden Morris to prove to the coaching staff why they should be back, rather than the coaching staff and to be like, yo, I'm sorry for not calling you to the World Cup. That's in the past. That's another thing that he said in the interview with US Soccer was, this is a new cycle and we're starting fresh. Everybody gets to start fresh. And as long as the players buy into that message, Tony, I think that will help keep everything fresh. And that is so important. That's so tenuous. But I think that's what Mauricio Pochettino is best at, more than tactics or anything else. It's the locker room culture. It's the fight, the competitiveness, the day in, day out stuff. It's no coincidence that their best performances together was at the World Cup, when they had a long run together within the same locker room with the same team building towards the same goal, rather than you get them for a week in September and then a week in October and then 6 days in November, and then you don't see them till March, right? And March was the worst performance of the Pochettino era. I don't think any of that's a coincidence.
Yeah, for someone like me, it's actually a frustrating conversation talking about culture on the national team. Like I get times change, right? But I just didn't grow up in a time where that was even a conversation, right? We weren't. This was like when you got the fax that said you were going to the national team. The culture started when you got the fax, when you had when you had the machine, right? And that part is a little bit frustrating for me. And I get it. Everybody's different. Everyone will have a different level of tolerance for all of that stuff. I completely understand. But I think it has to be a staple. I'm curious. We keep talking about culture. Like, what did he really change? Like, what changed in the culture? That he said you have to come and play with the national team? Okay, he set a marker down with Christian at the Gold Cup, right? He set a marker down basically with Yunus Musa. The other guys who had agreed behind the scenes to miss that tournament too, that actually went to the tournament, maybe got a little lucky and made the right decision at the end of the day, right? But I think any manager would have taken the same route, right? Benny, you would have been the same if you were managing the national team and those guys called and said, no, I only want to play this game. You would have handled it the same way, right? Hold on here. I got a job to do. My job is to make the national team better. The only way I can really make it better is to have all my players that are available to me, pick them and get them in camp. And that was a really important time. Remember, it was Pochettino's only chance he had. I think it was like a 30-day period, right? Something like that, where he had the players, guys like Max Arfstam, guys like Sebastian Berhalter, Malik Tillman during that tournament, Matt Freese during that tournament. We can make arguments in how they all played at the World Cup, but that's where those guys made their name and got on the Mauricio Pochettino radar, if you will. So those moments are really important for the manager to establish. But like, I don't understand this whole conversation of culture. If you don't want to come to the national team, don't come to the national team, but don't be there.
But I will say this, though,
privilege.
Tone, within that, I agree with everything that you're saying. I think the number one job and probably the hardest job for a national team manager is to ensure that the culture is consistent and high quality with the best players in the pool. And that's where I think people struggle. You talk about like England, right? You talk about England with Tuchel not bringing in, who was it? Foden and Palmer, right? So two guys that I think
Trent.
Most people in the world, Trent Alexander-Arnold, would say that they're of high quality enough to be on the roster, but he decided not to bring them for what I can assume is more cultural basis, right? Where he's not going to have that locker room compatibility and whatnot. And to me, that is one of the big roles of a coach is how do you get those three guys? I know we're talking about England right now, but how do you get those three guys being, culturally adaptable to the rest of the team and still have that kind of quality on your roster? So if that means, you need to bring in whatever, the guys that, Awaya that didn't play at all, maybe he's, culturally right now, he's on the outskirts right now because he got, he was disappointed, or Diego Luna is a guy maybe got disappointed with how he got brought out or whatever, or maybe other guys that we're not even talking about right now that are, that I'm not coming up in my head right now. But again, I think that's part of that job. Make sure that the best players are bought in. And I don't think it's an easy job.
So let's look forward to September. And reminder, this is going to be a 4-match window, a combined September-October window rather than doing 2 different ones. It's going to be one long one, which gives the chance for Pochettino and the staff to work with a lot of players. And the first camp after a World Cup, you want to see new faces. You want to start to see the transition to the next era. So, guys, a couple obvious ones for me. Xavier Gozo, I think, has to be there. Unless he gets a transfer and everybody decides it's better for him to be at his new club in September. But absent of that, I think Gozo has to be there. And then beyond that, we'll probably talk about Audrey Mehmeti, Calvin Sullivan, Julian Hall, whoever. So for you guys, who are you most looking forward to? We'll start with you, Tony. Who are you most looking forward to?
For me, 100%, I'm most looking forward to Noah Kai Banks being in camp at some point. I just think defensively we weren't good enough when it mattered the most. And I don't know if he's the ultimate solution. He's the guy out there that when we start talking about dual nationals and bidding, he's the guy I'd go after. Because with you, I think Xavier Gozo comes in. I think Mehmeti eventually comes in. I don't know if it's first camp or second camp, or if it's 6 months into the cycle. Whenever those guys are going to get a chance in the next 4 years to play. But Noah Kai Banks, he needs to get back to playing full time with his club team, and then we got to see if he's ready to play with our national team and wants to play with our national team. But I don't know if you can think of any other center backs that are out there that can come in. Oh, Pierre's another one. But again, this is a guy who got his first professional goal this weekend. He got his first minutes. Like we're talking about world.
He's for the right. Your Noah Kai Banks is well ahead of him. But Neil Pierre for the radar for the future.
Yeah, he's going to be in the cycle, no doubt about it. I don't know if it's first camp, second camp. I don't know how Pochettino is going to approach this, Benny, but it's guys like that I want to see. And then you've been doing this recently. Like, what's the risk of bringing like 15 new guys into camp as opposed to putting 4 or 5 guys this camp and seeing them, the guys that you think are at the top of the list, and see how they integrate. And then the next camp you bring 2 or 3, because he's in no rush to see every young player right now, right? I don't know. I
think there's a greater risk in bringing too many new guys at once, because exactly of what you're saying. You risk not learning anything about them, right? it's like that scenario where coaches have a midweek game, and instead of putting, 4 or 5 guys that maybe need to see minutes and you kind of want to see them in that first team element, you put a whole new 11, they all look in disarray. You really don't get to see anything about anybody. And so I agree. I think you try and, get a handful of players. The obvious ones are the obvious ones. And I think those are probably the ones that you try and bring in and mesh with the group that you build something within the World Cup cycle or within the World Cup. In terms of a player, right? I don't have a player, but what I do have is a position. I think we need to get a better handle on our goalkeeping position, Tony. And I don't know if you have players that I'm sure you have a better idea of where the pool is headed.
Yeah.
No, I don't know, but I don't. But I think we need to establish, man, ever since I've ever known the national team, before I played on it, during and after, that's been our greatest position worldwide, right? We've had high quality goalkeepers. And look, nothing against Turner, Freeze, Brady, but there was not that consistency there. There was not that level of high world-class talent there. I think, can we find somebody that's going to be that guy there for the next cycle, whether it's Brady, whether it's someone else coming through the ranks, whether it's a dual international that I haven't even heard of before. But that position, I think, is a position that was a little bit lacking compared to the rest of the guys on the team.
It's one position. I'm sorry if we have to go to a dual national. Not that it can't happen, but I'm like, I would say, how did we get here? Like, how did we get to that point? Benny, 2 years ago, I thought Gaga Slonina would be here. A bad move, an injury to his thumb that he didn't recover, or his hand that he didn't recover from very well. Has to make the right move and has to find minutes. Diego Cochin is the other guy, right? That we keep talking about at Barcelona. He's got to play in the first team somewhere. Now, I know he was part of the summer with the national team, and people really, really like him, But I can't think of a guy playing in the World Cup who's not playing in a first team somewhere. I don't care where you're at. Right?
He's at Lyngby in Denmark.
Yeah, he just got moved now to Lyngby, right? So that's going to be in it. This next 2 seasons is going to be really, really important for him to make that move. So there are guys out there, but they got to play minutes. And you're right. I did see someone tweeted, I don't know if it's tweet or whatever. What do you call it? Instagram post. I'm so good with this social media stuff, Tom.
I think that's how I would call it. IG as well.
Yeah. The Twitter, as we like to call it, right? There's a Japanese American. It's not Suzuki. I think it was his backup, right? That maybe also has some links that people were posting. Of course, now everybody's putting every player that even traveled to America on their list.
But I blame you on the Suzuki. Wasn't he born in Jersey?
Yeah, but I think he only lived here for like a month or two.
You should have found him out in that month.
Newark. Yeah. I wasn't hanging around Newark at that time. I was there.
Listen. I think we're getting too in the weeds here because I named a couple guys that we have hardly talked about. So Gozo, I think, is one, but like for me, the one I want to see most is Adrien Mehmeti, because I think that this kid is one of the most special players that is being produced right now in the American youth system. He's a first choice starter for the Red Bulls, and I think his game is going to go really well to Europe when he gets there, and it won't be too long for that. I just think that he's so silken, and he's a different type of profile than what we have in central midfield, and I just think the world of Adrien Mehmeti. If I had to bet on one of these guys to really, really make it, it's Adrien Mehmeti for me, and I think he'd be ready for a senior national call-up, but Steve Cherundolo will have U23 camps. Yeah. I'm sure we'll see whether it's Adrien Mehmeti, Julian Hall, Kevin Sullivan, Gozo. If they're not with the first team, I think they'll for sure be with the U23s. So there's going to be plenty of time to see.
Just to add something with Mehmeti, which I think is fantastic for him. I compare him to Michael Bradley in a lot of ways. I think that he plays a similar way. I think he has a similar style of wanting to get into the attack in late running situations. Obviously, his ability on the ball. His ability to cover ground, and he gets to be coached by Michael Bradley every day. So I do think that not only the quality, yes, we can see the quality and the talent, but the development, he will have a perfect scenario here in the next year, however long he's there at Red Bull, to continue to improve and become that international caliber central midfielder.
Benny, really quickly, you spoke with Audrey on Morning Footy recently. What did you take away from that conversation? More about his mentality and his mentals rather than, the technical quality that we all see.
I mean, he's 17 years old. He seems like he's 21 already, right? I mean, I always talk back to, when I was 17, I couldn't even think about giving an interview at that point on TV. I was, a junior in high school and, had a lot to learn. So these kids are so far advanced, not only from the soccer perspective, but just from the mental perspective, the maturity perspective. He seems like a kid that's got a very high IQ on the field, very intelligent off the field, understands the things that he needs to improve on. Good head on his shoulder. So I think he's well on his way to, like you said, becoming a very important part, whether it's the full team in a couple of years or the 23s in not so many years in a short amount of time. But he's been very productive in MLS, and I think he's got a very good road in front of him of continued development.
I think so too. I'm all in on that kid. But before we go to a break, Mauricio Pochettino, we're talking about whether he'll be here in 4 years. We put it up as a poll. 57% believe that Mauricio Pochettino will be the USMNT head coach at the 2030 World Cup. Really quickly, guys, what say you?
I mean, it's pretty much 50-50, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's right there.
A couple more
too.
votes, you're 50-50. And, that's, I'd rather it be wherever it's 95% people think, because that's the problem is if it doesn't, the hiring is not great. If it doesn't see a full 4-year cycle. And I said this yesterday in our production call, Benny, you weren't there. I still think we need to have Americans on that coaching staff, and not just Steve Cherundolo, who should be, he's our under 23s. He should be around the national team all the time. It would be sad if we went a 4-year cycle with Mauricio Pochettino and all the intelligence in his staff, and that didn't rub off somehow, Benny, on some American managers, some American coaches that will take over the 23s after, or take over the national team after, whatever it is, or take over the national team 10 years from now. Like, we need to. So one thing Jurgen Klinsmann was really, really good about, he included American coaches all the time, and they learned a lot from him. They learned, even if you learn what you don't want to do as a manager, Benny, that's equally as important as learning what you want to do.
Very true. Yeah. Look, Tom, and just to add to the 57 and the 43%, yes, if he's there, great. If he's not great. The other question is, does the fact that the players, right, know that is always going to be a possibility, does that, discredit him every single day on the training field or not? So another concern, I hope it doesn't, and I hope everything works out as perfectly as we all, would hope for. But those are the realities that he's going to have to deal with.
Hope is the most dangerous thing you can give a man. But we're going to take a quick break here. There are significant changes coming to Major League Soccer. We're going to break it all down when we're right back from this quick break.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
All right, everybody. We are back. And Larry Berg has been selected as the next Major League Soccer commissioner. The MLS owners voted in New York City on Monday for Don Garber's successor, Larry Berg, who is a co-owner of LAFC. He will need to divest his ownership in that club. He's somebody that has the respect of the owners in that room. He's been the co-chair of the sporting committee, the committee that does help determine what the changes, what the big level changes are going to be in MLS. And he's somebody that sources in those rooms tell me is pushing for change in the league. And not just that, but efficiency in decision-making, which is something that I think is very much needed at this stage. Listen, the schedule change, it just so painfully obviously should have been happening this summer, but they were too slow to push some of the more conservative owners through on the change. Same thing with the roster rules. There's a lot to discuss about what's at the top of his to-do list. But first of all, Tony, what are your thoughts on a new Major League Soccer commissioner?
Yeah, prior to this, honestly, prior to this whole sort of sequence here of Don Garber transitioning out, I didn't know much about Larry Berg. I knew his name. I didn't really know what his function was and how he did it. And clearly the rest of the owners thought that he should be one of the two guys on the list in the end. But he was sort of the businessman, right? And and Nathanson was sort of the television guy, right? Or
Correct.
the media guy.
Those were the broad strokes. And sorry, Tony, to cut you off, but to Larry Berg was viewed as the favorite pretty early when the finalists came out. Continue.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like the owners got their guy. I do like the fact that he's been one of the owners that has pushed the envelope, right? Like the Moss brothers have, like they have in Atlanta with Arthur Blank. There's been guys all around the league that are like in the 2.0 or the 3.0 MLS that have pushed the envelope with roster rules and with spending and, pushing other owners. So I like that part. So yeah, in general, congratulations to him. The owners clearly know what they were looking for, and they got their guy. I think it's going to be really hard from a structural standpoint to do more than Don Garber did in his tenure, right? I think it was 12 teams when he came in, 2 teams contracted, and then 20 teams back into the league, right? So to get us to 30, I think that's how the math was during his tenure. I don't know that we're going to see 20 teams come in Larry Berg's tenure, but that doesn't mean he can't help grow the league. I think number one priority is eyeballs on television. How do we get the eyeballs on television in this new contract where you can walk into bars? I walked into a bar the other day and I saw Louisville playing Tampa in the USL on every
what a
screen.
game that was.
That was a crazy one, yeah.
Crazy one. They had like 5 goals. I think it was 5-0 or 5-1 at the time.
5-4.
It was 3-0 and 4-1 at one point, or 4-3, and it ended 5-4.
I walked in, it was 4-0 or 3-0,
3-0,
maybe, whatever it is. But CBS, our platform was on all over the bar, where currently it doesn't work that way in MLS, right? So there were people sat down watching a soccer game. I'm guessing partly because some of them watched the World Cup in the summer, they got enthralled, and now they're watching a game that maybe they don't even know. Some people were there to support a team. So it was really, really interesting to see. We need to have eyeballs on TVs because the stadiums are beginning to be filled all over the country, right? So we got that part right. Now we got to get the other part right.
So the biggest things for the commissioner, for Larry Berg now and the owners is the media rights deal ends in the summer of 2029. To plot that, I think first, Benny, it's the new salary cap, new roster rule structure, and that change, as Paul Tenorio and I report on The Athletic, the proposal, or at least the advanced discussions, are on a more open salary cap in which there's a floor and there's probably a ceiling. Maybe it's 15 million floor, maybe it's 30, maybe it's more than that for the ceiling. Still some DP spots because that's how, if a team wants to afford Messi or Son Heung-min or whoever, then you can have that within the structure if you want to pay more. Discretionary spend for the owners who want to pay more. But when I talk to general managers and CSOs, I've never gotten as much consensus on a topic as this. When you'd ask, what would you want to see the salary cap roster rule changes be? And everybody said, just give us a floor, give us a ceiling, give us a couple DPs and take away everything else. Like, let us just build rosters the way that we want to. You're going to get teams that spend more. You'll get teams that spend less, but everybody will have an identity. So, Benny, what would you like to see from the new, roster rule proposes, or something that even maybe if I even haven't said that you'd love to be included or taken away?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna get to that in 1 second. First, I just want to preface it with I actually got to know Larry Berg. I played at LAFC. He was our owner. He was our leading owner, where he was the face of the ownership group. He was around the team. I've golfed with him before, and so he's a fantastic human being first and foremost. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why he's been able to get so many owners to back him, support him, and want him to kind of be the face of the league. And I agree with Tony as well, right? Don Garber's been the commissioner since day one. Am I right in saying that, or no? Since how many years?
He's the third. So Larry Berg is the third commissioner. Don Garber was the second.
Doug
Don
Logan
Garber
was first.
Okay.
Doug Logan, yeah.
And sorry to interject again, but like just in case it isn't abundantly clear, Major League Soccer doesn't exist without Don Garber. It was absolutely going to fold in the early 2000s. So
correct. He's on the Mount Rushmore, right, of MLS, with what he's been able to create, what he's been able to uphold and grow, really, right? I mean, like what we talked about, there's so many teams, so many top players. This league is visually seen worldwide. And so I think you don't even need to compare the two right now. But now going forward, in terms of what we would like to see from Larry, I think it's kind of what both you guys talked about. One, it's visibility, being able to see the game on TV, whether it's, in the local bar, whether it's on prominent channels, whether it's in Europe, South America. You want to be able to have the game be seen everywhere, just like the Prem is, right, to all American fans. And so that's number one. And then number two is what you touched about, Tom, in terms of the roster rules. We want to see a little bit more transparency. I think regardless with what we evolve into, right, there's going to always be teams that are going to be willing to spend more and teams that are going to be a little bit less, are going to be a little bit more thrifty with their money, right? And we're going to see a little bit more disparity in the league. This is one thing that MLS has been really good about. There's always a new champion, right? I don't know the last time that there's back-to-back champions. It might have been Galaxy in 11 and 12. I could be wrong on that. Maybe, I don't know if, anyways, I think
because Toronto didn't get there.
So we see different champions all the time, and that might change potentially if we start getting into a league that has a little bit more parity, where some of the big, like you said, ceiling and floor. But I think that's ultimately what you have to do if you want to start growing the quality of the players in this league, and you got to bring more, talent and more visibility to it, and more people want to watch it. It's not that everybody's spending the exact same and the competition is exactly the same. You got to have the teams, the Real Madrids, the Barcelonas, the Liverpools, the Man Uniteds, that are going to spend more than the other teams, so that the growth of the fan and the visibility worldwide is going to continue to evolve. So again, long-winded, but I think those 2 points are obviously right at the forefront of what he needs to do.
On the parity and stuff, listen, I think that there being a new champion every year, essentially, I think that has more to do with the randomness of the playoffs than anything else. Like, I think, there's a lot of parity in Major League Soccer, particularly because of that. But if you look at the conferences, for the most part, it's the same teams in the top six, or similar teams in the top six. And whether it's tied to spending, yes, sometimes it is for some clubs. LAFC are always there. Seattle Sounders, ironically, don't spend very much anymore, but they're generally always there. Philadelphia Union from like 2019 through this year, and maybe they're on their way back, but they were always there. You go on down the list, Atlanta United has spent just about more money than anybody. They haven't been there at all since 2019, when their last really good year. So in terms of parity, I think the salary cap isn't going to magically make teams that spend big spend perfectly. And a team like Philadelphia Union, maybe they're going to need to do more to stay. Maybe Seattle Sounders are going to need to do more to stay in kind of that upper echelon. But I think that teams rise and fall. There are efficiencies. There are smart executives or coaches or special players that teams will stay near the top of the league. And whether you're going back to back in any of the trophies, I think it is a little bit besides the point when you get, how many times have we seen LAFC and Seattle in the conference semifinals, or the Columbus Crew under Wilfred Nancy, and even with Caleb Porter for a little bit. So this idea of parity is definitely one that's going to stay with MLS, but CF Montreal basically stinks every year right now. Toronto FC have not been good for a few years because of kind of mismanaging it in the past. So there are teams that won't be there or will be there, and more money. Maybe that'll exacerbate that, but I think that's already kind of happening right now. But kind of, Tony, for you, if you're commissioner for a day, what's the first or most important thing that you would focus on, change, or look to do for yourself?
I don't know if it's day one, Tom, but at some point we have to, a commissioner has to have the conversation with the rest of the owners. Now, interesting because Larry Berg was an owner, how they feel on Pro Rel and how they might make it work in MLS, right? I don't think there's ever going to be Pro Rel in all of the divisions, right? But can it be within MLS somehow, which means you probably got to get to 36 or 38 teams or 40 teams. And I get the arguments, but I just think there just needs to be more jeopardy with all of the teams. When there were less teams, there was actually seems like there was more jeopardy because we didn't have 9 teams. And what do we have? 18 teams that essentially make the playoffs, right now.
Well, so Tony, in the early days in MLS, wasn't it 8 of the 10 teams made the playoffs?
No, I don't think that. No, I think it was. Yeah, but there was just more jeopardy in games. Like you didn't. So even then, if that were I think it was 6, right? And there was the play-in game and all that. Like you didn't want to be one of the 4 teams out, and there were less games, so they meant more each game. But I mean, we have 18 teams that make the playoffs. Is there another league in the U.S. that has 18 teams that make the playoffs? Like, I feel like there's too many outs along the way. If you cut that down, if you cut just the number down, then there's a little bit more jeopardy for some teams. I understand why they do it. It's television. They had to fill the Apple deal with more of the games, right, that were promised to Apple, and they had to fill those dates. I get all of it, but we somehow, I don't know if owners may just be completely opposed to Pro Rel, then find a way to make the jeopardy, whether it's prize money, whether it's another target, I don't know, in the roster rule, you get some benefit from finishing in different spots, or you get something taken away if you don't, but I just don't feel like there's enough jeopardy in some of the games.
Benny, what would be the one thing for you?
Yeah, one thing for me would be kind of what you touched on, Tom, with more transparency and clarity with the salary cap. Just make it simpler. Obviously, we have the targeted allocation money, the general allocation money, the TAM and the GAM, and all its friends. And I think it'd be great if we kind of, like you said, floor, ceiling of salary cap. You add the couple of DPs that allow teams to go out and spend big on the Messis. But everybody's kind of have that same playing field in it, and it's a little bit more transparent, not only for the CSOs and the sporting directors, but just the fans as well. And they can follow a little bit better what their cap space is, what their team looks like, where they can add players. And so I think that'd be a big plus in continuing the development of the league.
Yeah, for me as well. Salary cap, get that done by 27 when the calendar flips. And a small one, if I may add a second, because we shouldn't even have to argue about it. All 30 MLS clubs in the Open Cup. It's very simple. That should be there. Listen, that's it for this MLS segment. Coming up, we're going to talk about Americans on the move in Europe. There should be some more heading overseas. We'll discuss all of this after the break.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale! Wonderful goal!
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
All right, we're back. Let's talk about Americans abroad. It's August. It's silly season. It's the transfer window. The first one that I want to talk to about today is Gio Reyna. That move from Borussia Mönchengladbach to Strasbourg is official. A fee of around $5 million after just one season at Strasbourg. Guys, Benny, I'll start with you on this one. What do you make of this move for Gio? Is this the right one?
Well, I don't know if it's the right one. We're going to find out in probably 6 months to 12 months time. I think it makes sense in the sense that he's leaving Gladbach, where he didn't have, the kind of year that I think he was expecting or hoping for, and now he's going to Strasbourg. Like the Ligue 1 in France is a lower level, in my opinion, than Bundesliga, and so he has the ability to maybe become a starter on that team, maybe showcase himself more in that league. But I think I think that he's been in Europe for, you guys tell me if I'm wrong, but 6-7 years now. He went there early, right? In his teenage years. And he showed a lot of promise, obviously, with Borussia Dortmund, and he has yet to really fulfill as a grown adult now, right? In first team football. If it doesn't work out in Strasbourg, I'm wondering if it's MLS after that. I think Gio's he's an incredibly talented player, but talent doesn't take you everywhere. It doesn't. There's more to it than that. There's the mentality. There's the team aspect of the game. There's what kind of pro are you on and off the field. And look, I don't know Gio. He might check off all the boxes in that regard, but he's yet to push himself to that next. Hey, I am one of the first 11 guys on the roster sheet week in and week out. And I think that's what his goal needs to be. There were some players in my time that were so good at doing that, right? You saw, we talked about Michael Bradley before. He was so good at doing that in Europe, where he went to Gladbach. I was like, man, that's going to be tough for him coming from Heerenveen. Well, he found a way to become a starter there. Then he went to Roma. That's going to be tough. And then he would lose his spot because another coach would come in, and then he'd win it back. And so you have to find a way. In Europe, it's not easy. It is not easy for Americans, and I know that it's a little bit different now than it was when I used to play. But I think that's what Gio needs to do. He needs to push through that difficulty and find a way to become an integral part of a team. If he doesn't, I think this might be one of the last stops that he has in Europe before he has to come back to MLS, which isn't a negative thing. I did that to a certain degree as well and found success in MLS. But again, we'd love to see Gio do what he can in Europe at a very high level, especially for what we think he can produce on the national team.
So Tony, Gio has played more than 1,000 minutes in a league season only one single time in his playing career, which is obviously disappointing between injuries and not being selected. The Strasbourg team, they spend a lot of money. They're backed by Blue Co, but they make a lot of sales outbound as well. We'll see where the dust settles on September 3rd based on who either stays, who's getting sold, or who else that they bring in. My one worry is that they will spend more money on attacking pieces. What do you think of Gio's chances at regular playing time?
So I'm assuming your worry is that because they're going to bring more attacking pieces, which means more competition. You're at Strasbourg. I'm not discrediting Strasbourg, but if you can't play at Strasbourg, right? And I get they're a young team that's got talented players and have sold, but okay, then where do you want to play? Like what's the ideal scenario? At some point, you got to play. You know, Benny, you're saying it's tough for American player over there. I get it. But you're talking about an American player who's been on 2 World Cup rosters, right? It's not like an American player that just played 2 years in MLS and is having like a Max Arfson who's now making his first move or potentially making his first move to Europe. And now you got to prove yourself. Like European scouts know exactly who Gio Reyna is. He's not a secret to anybody over there. We need to, and we have here, the onus needs to be on, and I will credit Jimmy Conrad for being the how do you say, the most vocal about this, right? Is that he needs to play, man. The onus is on him now to go and play. Doesn't matter what team he goes to now. You have to imagine after the teams he's been at, okay, you mentioned 1,000 minutes at Dortmund. There were a bunch of injury-laden seasons, right? That we thought he was making the breakthrough. Then you go to Nottingham Forest, which is the poor move. Like all of the moves have had to been digested and studied, and we can write papers on them right now to figure out what the next move is for Gio. I mean, he's got to play. Period. Doesn't matter where he is.
Yeah, he's got to find a way. He has got to find a way, and that's
correct.
Exactly what it is. It doesn't, and sometimes I wonder, there's certain players that they fit into such a particular set of circumstances, whether it's the way the team plays, the way the coach sees the players from an individual standpoint, maybe even relationship-wise. And I think that Gio seems to be that guy that when things are perfectly set up for him, you see all his true potential. But if something isn't right, if the coach doesn't see him exactly in his position or in the right way, or if the team doesn't fit the way he plays, then his level drops considerably. He's got to find a way past that, or else his time in Europe is probably going to come to an end.
What do you guys think if we set a couple over-under 750 minutes played in Ligue 1? Over-under 9.5 goal contributions? What do you guys think?
I'm going on my prayer over. I'm going on my prayers over.
What do you actually believe, though?
Over.
Okay.
Over.
750 minutes. I'm trying to think how in what's a 38 game season over there?
I think
what is that?
36. They dropped 18 teams, so it'll be 36.
I would say the minutes wise, 750 minutes seems like an over, unless he gets injured, seems pretty attainable. 9.5 goals. I'd have to go with history.
Goal or assist.
I'd go under on 9.5 goal contribution. I'm hoping I'm wrong, but if I had to put my life on it or betting, I think I'd go under, because I don't think, how many years has he had that he's been over 9.5 goal contributions?
Same things with the minutes, man. Like, I hope I'm wrong. Believe it when I see it at this point. So I'm under on both. Strasbourg is a better team than Gladbach. I thought he was going to play more to Gladbach. And it's just a hypothetical player right now. And it sucks because he's so talented. I hope, this is nothing personal, I hope for him that he's able to play and play well at Strasbourg. But Strasbourg performed better than Gladbach last year. And this is a team that has the backing of Blue Co, the Chelsea owners, there's going to be a ton of players. And then in January, if he hasn't gotten his position, they'll go buy somebody else, or they'll loan somebody from Chelsea.
Oh,
So
January, you got to have your position now. January, if you have your January
Tony,
position,
my point is this if it's January 1st and it's not working, it's over.
Yeah, it's a failed deal at that point. You got to have your position. You just, I don't know how much they spend on other players, but I'm guessing at their club, how many $5 million players are there at their club?
More.
Outside of loaned from
I think you're underestimating their buying power.
Yeah. What were they in Conference League last year, right? Didn't they lose to because I did the final, didn't they lose to Rayo, I think, in the Conference League in the semifinals last year? One of the two, or was it Crystal Palace? I think they lost to one of the finalists in Conference League, and actually were maybe the favorite in that, or should have won, if I recall correctly. I mean, that was a couple months ago. But yeah, they made it at least that far. But then it's a failed move. If your expectation happens, then it's not going to be a great move.
That's the worry. That's the whole over under. Let's talk about some other young Americans who haven't gotten a move, at least yet. Again, it's August 4th, the time of recording. There's plenty of time left in the transfer window. But 3 from MLS. There's Diego Luna, Xavier Gozo, Peyton Miller. I'm going to tell you guys what I've heard on all 3. First of all, Peyton Miller, he signed a new contract. Sources tell me that there were offers, there was opportunities, and Peyton Miller decided he wanted to stay at New England for now. So hopefully in the future he'll go. But that was a Peyton Miller decision as far as I understand. Diego Luna, Monterrey made a low bid for him, and they kind of quickly moved on. There's been some clubs in Europe that are interested, but nothing that is too advanced. Xavier Gozo, I think we'll have more on this soon, but by September 3rd, I'm expecting him to be in Europe and not at Real Salt Lake.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's made it clear he wants to leave. The clubs that I've heard that are in for him, the ones that I've reported in January, it was Aston Villa and Atletico Madrid. There are other teams and other teams with spending power. When those teams come and the player himself says, I want to go, in 2026, those deals just happen.
Interesting. Yeah, look, I mean, I think all the players that you mentioned obviously have a lot of quality and have had a lot of success already at a short period of time in MLS. Gozo's is interesting to me because he's kind of come out of nowhere over the last, 12 months or so. Yeah. And he's been fantastic, right? In that role that they use him in Salt Lake as a attacking wing back. He's so good going forward, one-on-one situations, getting in on the back end of crosses from the opposite side. It almost feels like a perfect situation for him right now. As a young player, you want to be getting minutes. And if you were to tell me, hey, there's, the team in the Eredivisie, like an Ajax, a PSV, something like that, I think that could be fantastic for him.
They're priced out.
That's fine. And I understand it. But I think those are the teams that he's going to go in there and probably have a really good shot of starting right away and getting real minutes at a high level, playing Champions League. Man, going to Atletico Madrid, you're not guaranteed to play, right? You might be sitting on the bench. You see American guys that are there. Obed Vargas, Tom, you would know better than me, but I've heard rumors that he might be on the way out because he's not getting those minutes there. And so it becomes a very precarious situation going to Europe to a top team where you're not only not guaranteed minutes, but it's almost more likely that you're not going to get them at that age. And then what are you doing? You're training there for 12 months. You get kind of forgotten about in the national team a little bit. You're not getting the consistency of minutes that you want to get at an early age. Maybe you get loaned out somewhere or you have to make another move. Excuse me. And so financially, for the player, it's great. You're going to get paid. You're going to get money. And wherever you go from there, from Atletico Madrid, you're still going to get paid, right? So financially, it's great. But in terms of career-wise and football progression, it could become concerning. Now, I think all those guys have the quality to do it, but we'll see, where they land and what they can do when they get there.
Priced out as well, not personal terms like the club. And I don't think in any of these, like Real Salt Lake have 2 of these players, I don't think that they're doing anything wrong. If you get a higher bid for a player, like that's their job. Yeah. And it is still moving the player on to Europe. But I want to be clear, it's not as if Gozo was putting his hand out saying, hey, I want a bigger contract.
I understood you.
Yeah. Elsewhere here, some bigger names, more established names. Flo Baugen, I still expect him to depart Monaco this summer, but maybe things are going a little bit slower from the outside than I thought. They're still interested in England. PSG's been linked with him. I don't know about that one. And then there's Tyler Adams. He's been linked with Newcastle as a potential replacement for Bruno Guimaraes. Tony, any outlook or hopes for either of these?
Tyler would go there when everyone's going out the door at Newcastle, right? Guimaraes is a different type of player, right? Than Tyler is, but obviously Newcastle, one of the top 3 richest clubs in the world. So we'll see what their rebuild looks like. Flo Balogun, I had said we did that thing on Morning Footy. I think I said out of the teams I had, Juventus made the most sense, right? Of the teams we had. He would be a great fit in Serie A and be at a massive club, but then you got to potentially pass up playing in Europe, or in Champions League, I should say, not in Europe, because they are playing in Europe. So we'll see how that turns out. Who was the other one? The third one?
Just the two, Balogun and Adams.
Oh, those two. Yeah. I mean, Tyler's the interesting one, right? Because he's in such a place where they love him. He's going to play week in and week out. He's developed there, and now a new manager. That's a different story, right? How he feels about that and how he felt about his old manager. But that's an interesting one to see how that turns out. I do think, Benny, with Balogun, just goal scorers, right? People are looking at goal scorers, and I know Juve just signed Kolo Muani. I saw that clip of McKennie and him in the locker room, right? It's like, but Kolo Muani didn't light it up when he was at Juve. He scored in the first game, I think, when he was on loan at Juve, and then it wasn't like he lit up the place. So that's, I still think there's a need for him there, but and he played on the right side at Juventus, by the way. He didn't play centrally for the club. So there's a conversation that they could fit both those guys in the field, but I just think with goal scorers, Benny, those guys are always going to be the most attractive, sort of first names in the hat, if you will.
Right, they're hot commodities. But also within that, I think the goal scorers sometimes find a niche in Monaco or in a place that they're at, and then have a hard time translating to doing the same thing potentially somewhere else, right? So I think Balogun needs to be more cautious with wherever he decides to go, because he's found a place where he's been really successful, and it's translated obviously to the international stage as well. Where actually I think Tyler Adams is a guy that you can pretty much put on any team in the world, and he will find a way to help that team in some way, just because he runs all over the place. He's selfless. He does the defensive things that I think are invaluable to teams. And so for me, Tyler Adams can go any team in the world and he'll find success there. Where Balogun, I think, needs to be, okay, maybe it is Juventus, but maybe it's better to stay at Monaco. Maybe there's another team that makes more sense. I think he needs to be careful and cautious, right, to find a place that fits his style.
Elsewhere around the national team, we talked about that combined September-October window. Well, some breaking news. We have confirmed the opponents for the U.S. national team in that window. It is going to be Peru, Chile, Mexico, and Canada. All 4 games within the United States. I think this is a really exciting window. Those are 2 good South American teams. Obviously, it's not Argentina or Brazil, but 2 good South American teams. And then
Tom, those are
the
Tom, 2 good South American teams. I'm pretty sure those are the 2 bottom teams in South America.
It's a tough place to qualify.
So I don't disagree. Every team in South America is of high quality, but I'm pretty sure Peru and Chile at least in this last cycle, were 2 of the bottom 3.
That's fair. That's fair to push me on. Neither were at the World Cup. And then we have Jesse Marsh's return to playing against the United States. That's always fun.
Yeah, in general, I would have loved to have seen European teams. I know it's hard, right, with the schedules in Europe. It's an okay schedule. I'm with Benny on the other on the 2 South American teams. Not great South American teams, but look, it is what it is, right? This is what you got to play. So 4 chances now. Now, it could be vitally important if Pochettino decides, like we were talking about, that, hey, we're going to use a lot of younger guys in this camp. Like, we're going to go we're going to let the older guys, for the most part, find their way back in Europe, get their legs underneath them. You still got Christian that's injured. Maybe we leave those guys. Now, if that's the case, this window is really, really good. If we have our full team, for me, it's just an okay window, but a great opportunity for Pochettino.
What
learning experience. This will be the first window.
Has he beaten Mexico?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so. But what's the number of what's the roster number for this camp? That's
whatever the hell they want.
They can do what I would say. I mean, I don't remember the last time we had a 4-game camp, right? Four game.
It's combining the September and October,
which is fantastic, though, right? Because you're able
4 games
to
in
do
10 days ain't easy, though.
That's true. But so that's why you bring a bigger roster. And to
Yep.
what Tony was talking about, I would love to see a roster that's a very good mix of some of the veterans that we saw in the World Cup and some of the young faces. So you can kind of mix and mash and see exactly where these younger players or guys that haven't been brought in yet, how they fit in and who really has that quality to kind of push the roster depth.
I would agree. I'm very excited to see when that roster comes out. We'll have it all for you here. Maybe Charlie Davies and Jimmy Conrad will be back from vacation. Who knows? Maybe they'll have another vacation. Those pampered stars, they want to take time off. But before we get out of here, I want to end with a special shout out to Paul Kennedy, the editor-in-chief of Soccer America for something like 4 decades. He's an absolute legend in the American media sphere. Somebody who's been covering the game long before I was alive. He's just the absolute best. He's taking a step back from his editor-in-chief role at Soccer America. Don't worry. He will continue writing a bit. He says he's excited about that. But what an unbelievable career and somebody that deserves all the flowers that we can give him. So shout out to Paul Kennedy. He won't listen to this, but shout out to Paul Kennedy. He probably doesn't want this either. But shout out to Paul Kennedy, the editor-in-chief of Soccer
Paul.
America. Thank you, Benny. Thank you, Uncle T. Appreciate you all in the YouTube. Everybody who's listening, appreciate you. We'll be back very soon.